Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm here to talk to you about portfolio sites. And when I was a new grad looking for my first job as a developer, I was told that everyone needed to have a portfolio site. But what I didn't know is that what it should look like. I didn't know what it should include or even like why it was important. So over the next 3 years, I rebuilt my portfolio site like a dozen times trying to get it perfect. And through all of that, I learned that just like coding, sometimes the biggest lessons we learn come from doing things the wrong way. So I'm happy to be here to share with you 7 pitfalls that I fell into when creating my portfolio site, and hopefully how you can avoid them. So you've probably guessed the very first one is spending just way too much time on it. uh, please don't do what I did and obsess over it. Uh, just as a reality check, developers get jobs all the time without portfolios. It doesn't make or break your job search. So it is just totally fine to not have one if you frankly don't have the time. So instead, think about and know why you might want one. For any new grads or career changers out there, a portfolio is actually a really great way to present your student projects in a professional way. And for those of you that have been in the industry longer, or if you're a freelancer looking for clients, a portfolio can add a lot more details and information that don't fit on like a traditional boring resume. So I suggest you have a clear purpose for your portfolio, which is probably to make it easier for a recruiter or a hiring manager to understand your unique qualifications. Um, so don't do what I did. Give yourself a deadline to complete it. And realize that you don't want to take time away from all the other important things you got to do during your job search, like networking or interview prep, to build your portfolio. But, if you do decide to create one, just be careful when building it from scratch. So, again, don't do what I do and just waste lots and lots of time trying out uh, different frameworks, building complex apps, uh, kind of futzing around with multiple different technologies or component libraries or styling. Instead, make the content your top priority. And that includes writing a really good bio that you can use on your portfolio or really anywhere on all social media, LinkedIn, even your resume. And also crafting really good write ups on each of your portfolio pieces. That should be the focus. Um, and, you know, you don't have to build it from scratch. Seriously, we know you can build it, but you don't have to. So don't turn the portfolio itself into a portfolio piece. You can just save so much time by using something like a pre-made template or a website builder, or you may just decide to scratch the traditional portfolio altogether and just build something basic like an about me page or build up your GitHub profile readme. Um, those are all good options and good alternatives. If you do decide to build it, though, just try to keep it simple because you will need to spend plenty of time selecting the right portfolio pieces or projects to feature on it. Which brings me to the next pitfall I fell into, which was selecting the wrong portfolio pieces. So, in some of the earlier versions of my portfolio, I felt the need to just include literally everything I ever worked on. This backfired on me because during interviews, uh, not all projects were relevant to the job I was applying for, or they weren't even my best work. And that just confused people and made it difficult for me to talk about my work. So I recommend you choose work samples that you are the proudest of, also ones that you can discuss in detail because people will look at your portfolio and then ask you specific questions about the projects you have on there. Another issue I had was thinking that my work just wasn't good enough to put in my portfolio. Um, if these thoughts come into your mind, I can relate. I seeing my imposter syndrome here, I'm calling it out. What helped me work through that part was getting feedback from friends and peers about my work. That actually helped me the most to keep perspective, but also like boost my confidence in my work. And if you're wondering here about what should I be working on, or what kind of side projects should I do, you should stay tuned for voice talk that's up next after this. So now that you have your portfolio pieces all picked out, please avoid this next mistake I had, which was having an unclear presentation of them. So originally I thought a portfolio was just taking a bunch of screenshots and links and throwing them up on a page. But that actually left hiring managers or people I was sharing it with just like a lot of questions like, what is this thing you did? Or what was this for? What technologies did you use? What specifically did you work on? So you don't have to include like a lengthy write-up. You can include however much detail you want about your projects, but it will help everyone a lot if you describe the context of the app and also list out specific skills and technologies or just the tech stack that you used. You can actually take it a step further and show the impact of your work. Things like, did you meet the client's requirements? Did you move a metric or a business goal? Did you do something really interesting with the tech? Just show why that project is portfolio worthy. You can even take it up another step, and in each one of your projects, highlight something between each of them that will create like a thread. For example, do you have a special area of focus or perspective that you brought to each project? Even a specific tech stack that you used in each of them. You could start to represent your projects in more of a templatized way to make the thread clear. You could do something even like case studies or problem solution type approach. And what that will do is pull all of your standalone projects together to form like a more cohesive body of work. And for me, having those solid pieces picked out with like a clear write-up, that boosted my confidence so much, but it also made it really easy for me to talk about my work in interviews. So another big pitfall I fell into was over and under designing my portfolio. I got really, really hung up on this because I realized I was comparing my portfolios to portfolios created by designers. Now, if you're not a designer, no one should be looking at your site expecting a sophisticated design. If design really isn't your thing, you can just use minimalistic styling or basic styling, or just go ahead and find a pre-made template out there that you really like. But I will say that doesn't mean your portfolio shouldn't look good. It should absolutely look good because it's representing you. And bad design could portray you negatively or even look amateurish. But there's plenty of room here in your portfolio to add personality. I'd say go for it. After all, it's not a boring resume. Just don't fall into that first pitfall, which is spending way too much time designing. You'll also want to avoid burying your contact info. At one point, my portfolio was a chatbot, and visitors would have to chat with the bot if they wanted to get my contact info. That frustrated people, and I got some DMs just asking for my email. So it may be hard to hear, but your contact info might be the only reason someone is on your portfolio site. So just make it easy for anyone to get a hold of you. This is also a great spot to mention. to keep all of those links up to date. Don't have any broken links, and make sure you QA everything. So after your portfolio is built, it looks amazing. You've got great pieces in there. Don't do what I did and not share it. Uh, Even with all of my countless hours I put into my many portfolios, it was still really hard for me to show it to people. So calling out my imposter syndrome here too. And if this is something you can relate to, don't give up working through it. Start small, get some friends, some family to look at it. Uh, and as you start to share it with more people, you can start to ask for feedback tactfully to improve it. Like, hey, did you check out my portfolio? Or any thoughts on my portfolio? Do you have any questions about it? Or if you have someone that's more willing to give you feedback, you can say, hey, was there anything you expected to see there that wasn't there? That'll help you to get more insight to what people are looking for with your portfolio, but also just to continue to make tweaks to the content or improve it over time. So just to recap, you know, make sure you budget your time wisely, and be okay with any time-saving alternatives. If you're building a site, keep it simple. Be open to easy-to-use tools. And when selecting your pieces, pick all the work samples you're really proud of. Present them in the best possible way by explaining the content, the skills, the impact. And remember, it doesn't need to be fancy, just well put together. Don't forget to make your contact info visible. And last but not least, don't forget to share your portfolio and promote it. Um, so I hope all of these lessons I learned were helpful for you. I do have some resources in the link on this slide that helped me a lot, and I'm happy to share that in the session chat. Yeah, you can also get a hold of me at ChristyLittleGuardia.com, which is my final portfolio site.
Thank you, Christy. Those were great tips. I know I'm not speaking just for myself and been there. Yep. Some of it felt a bit targeted. But we had some great questions in the chat throughout. We have about 5 minutes, so we'll see how many we can get to. It looks like some resources were starting to be shared, but Deanne asked, what's a good free template site to use?
You know, I've been a fan lately of like Webflow, and they have like several portfolio geared templates, but Squarespace also has some, Wix has some. And I'll share my link that has some resources. I found some GitHub templates too, if you want to do a GitHub site.
Great, thank you. Another one from Rosella. If you write on a platform like Dev.to or Medium, do you recommend having a dedicated section in the portfolio to highlight this work?
Good question. I mean, I think like your full online presence is valuable. You worked hard to build that up, so why not share that? If someone does land on your portfolio, I mean, you could just sort of have your Medium link like with the icon or something like prominent, and that kind of shows you're an active writer on Medium. But yeah, I say don't hide that. If you're writing, that's great. Like share that out.
Yeah. Another one we got is, what if the sites or source code for websites you've built is unavailable? And I think another one that was maybe somewhat related, tips for someone whose best work is mostly confidential.
Yeah, I have a lot of that too. Most of my recent work is, hidden code, you could say, private work. Um, there are some things like you can try and maybe just have text only about it. As long as you're not divulging any secrets, of course, you can still talk about things in like common terms. Like I could give you an example for me. Like I worked on a lot of B2B sites and sign up flows and onboarding flows. Those are all features that most people are familiar with. So if you could talk about it that way without necessarily needing to show proof, that I think that still reflects well on you. And as long as you can talk about it like with in an interview that will give you, I think, the credit, but also help whoever you're talking to see like what you worked on.
Mm-hmm. I want to share that I shared Christy's slides in the chat. MM was also asking if you could share your portfolio, so I copied a link over to that in the chat. Another question we had come in is, are portfolio sites geared towards app interface work? Amanda works in data, backend solutions, nothing pretty, so she's not sure of the best way to highlight this work.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that what's out there is from primarily, user facing work, but I don't think that that should be it. I think the way that I look at a portfolio is like a more fun resume. So whatever you would put on your resume, I think is portfolio worthy. For back-end work, like you can still have some visuals in there. Like, I mean, maybe you would have a system diagram or even just like a badge of each of the technologies you use. I've seen also a lot of like more minimalist, more techie templates that just might be more fun to add more visual aspects if your work itself isn't inherently visual. But you can also focus on the writing, like how writing it in a way that makes sense and that's more interesting to look at. Hope that helps.
Yeah, we've also gotten a couple of questions related to if all of someone's code is in GitHub, is a personal website or portfolio really necessary?
Good question. Yes and no. I mean, like I said in the talk, there's no requirement to have a portfolio. I think one thing that a portfolio does that a whole bunch of repositories don't do is it's like one page. It's succinct information, and hiring people are really busy. Someone that would actually go and look at your GitHub in your code is you're probably further along in that screening process or interview process, and that's like a lot of time for someone to do. So one thing you can do if you don't want to make a portfolio is you can pin those repositories on your portfolio or on your GitHub profile page and add like a good description. I see a lot of people that put emojis too in their description. That's kind of fun. But like make it clear if someone just glances at your repositories, what are the technologies? What was this thing that you did? That will make it sort of like a GitHub portfolio.
Yeah, that's great. Love a good README.
Yeah.
We'll take one more question. What if I only have one project in my portfolio? Should I build more projects first, then think about a portfolio website later?
That's totally up to you. I think if it's going to be hard for you and you look at your portfolio and all you see is a lack of projects, then I think maybe your portfolio should be slanted more towards like an about me page, like talk more about yourself, put stuff in there about what you're learning or your background. And I would say definitely don't list out your projects like a list so that they see, they see that it's a short list. You can also, with that one project, like maybe make a whole page about it. Talk about what you learned, maybe show multiple screenshots. Like in some ways, the real estate here is important. And then as you get more projects, you can shrink that down and add the other ones in there. That's what I did over time. And then eventually, you'll have a whole bunch of them on there, and now you've got to start editing. But I don't think it should deter you. I think just make the portfolio from the perspective of someone trying to get to know you.
Love that. A great tip on using the content that you have available or experience you have available. All right. I know we have a couple more questions in the chat, but we're going to move over to our second chat. So thank you again, Christy. And with that,